So Marjorie, are you actually using Dorset lamb in your recipe today?
Yes, I am. We're very lucky that on Poundbury we have a butcher who prides himself on buying as much as he can locally, and so we are using Dorset lamb.
And no doubt you know that the hardy Dorset horn breed, who are stocky white-faced sheep like the one that you've got on your apron there, and in days gone by when travel was basically on foot and crossbreeding wasn't very easy, the Dorset horn was the only breed which would lamb all the year round. And over this series we'll interview some of the farmers and merchants who provide the ingredients for the various dishes that you're going to make, ranging from freezing cold Dorset ice cream to scorching hot Dorset chilies, which are amongst the hottest in the world on the Scoville scale. So quite a few people are vegetarian, Marjorie. Can you adopt this dish to vegetarian?
Yes, I can. It's very easy, and I'll explain as I'm cooking, but it is really easy to do. Just not use the lamb, not use lamb stock, but use brown lentils, 2 tins of brown lentils, and then vegetable stock, and that works with that. Or you can have your lentils that you buy dried, and you just have to work out how many you'll need. You open the tins of lentils, rinse them off, and they're ready to go.
Marjorie, what would you serve with this dish typically?
Well, I personally would just serve a vegetable. It's very, very rich, this dish. So much so that you absolutely do not need potatoes. And it's fantastic if you've got lots of people coming round for a meal. You're not there peeling loads of potatoes. Traditionally, I use cabbage. The reason being is that Dorset was the very first county that ever grew cabbages. They were imported into England from Holland in 1568 by Sir Anthony Astley of Wimborne St Giles. And interestingly, if you go to the village of Wimborne St Giles, he's got a tombstone with, you know, an effigy on the top, and at his feet there is a cabbage.
Well, I'm really looking forward to tasting it.
Okay, well, I'll stop talking and let's get cooking. So I'm going to put in 1 chopped up onion with some oil, and I'm going to let that sweat for a little while. The other nice thing about this dish, well, one of the good things for me about this dish, is that it's one that you can make in advance and put in the freezer. So I'm only doing the onion at the minute. It is going to have garlic in, but you know, as we all know, you shouldn't put the garlic in at the same time as the onions, because the garlic cooks so much quicker, you end up with burnt garlic. So it's better to switch off the onions first and then add the garlic. So here we go. It's getting warm now. To this I'm going to add 500 grams peeled and chopped, 1 stick of celery peeled and chopped, and then a few more ingredients that I'll tell you about as we get to them. It's a very simple recipe. You know, you don't have to buy special stuff. A few more ingredients that I'll tell you about as we get to them. It's a very simple recipe. You know, you don't have to buy special stuff you're never going to use again. It's really all reasonably easy, and all with stuff that you're going to find in your cupboard. I hate buying things that I can only use once. It's such a waste. It's like kitchen gadgets. If you only do one thing, I don't want them.
Marjorie, does the red wine go into the dish, or does it go into the chef?
Oh, well, probably most of it will go into the dish, and if I'm feeling it's gone well, I might just treat myself to a little bit myself. But thank you for pointing that out, Jeff. So here we are. That's beginning to soften off nicely now, and so then I'm going to add the lamb. The great thing is I'm just going to use this 1 pan. You know, there's none setting aside and a bit here and a bit there and loads of washing up. There's just this 1 pan, and then the stuff I'm going to make the crumble in. So it's really easy peasy. So now I'm going to put the lamb in there. If I was using lentils, I'd probably put the lentils in at the same time as I put the rest of the veg in, because especially if you're using tinned lentils, because they're kind of partly cooked, so they don't need as long.
And do you add stock? Or do you
I do, yes. I have lamb stock and the wine, of course. And you know, traditionally when you were cooking a leg of lamb, you'd add rosemary on the top, and rosemary goes in this dish as well. In fact, that's the only flavouring other than salt and pepper and the flavour from the wine. That's literally all there is. So here we are, that's beginning to cook nicely.
I remember, Marjorie, when you first demonstrated this, that you had an alternative, putting anchovies.
I did. Because the recipe I originally found when I was looking for something Dorset, you remember, Jeff, it was for a fundraiser. So I was looking for something that was inexpensive and something that would be easy to do. And the original recipe I found, which was for a man in his van, had anchovies in. But we sat at a meeting, all the committee of the fundraisers, and I'd done two. One with anchovies and one without. And you all decided you actually preferred the without one because it was slightly less greasy. Because lamb's quite a fatty meat, and then of course anchovies, you've got to do a lot of wiping off to get rid of all the oil in them. So we decided it wasn't worth putting anchovies in, and I've never bothered ever since.
And you mentioned fundraising there. Just remind us why that lamb is all there.
Oh, right.
What this fundraising is for.
Okay, well, we're all from the village of Osmington in Dorset, where we have a very lovely 300-year-old church, St Osmond's. But of course, 300 years ago, the people who went to that church would have all lived in the village. So they didn't need things like somewhere to have a cup of tea, and they didn't need things like a toilet. Well, of course, today, that's just not the case. Not everybody can nip home, especially if you're attending somebody's wedding or sadly a funeral or somebody's christening. You know, and we haven't got a village pub. So where on earth are you going to go? And what we needed was to reorder and put in a toilet. So basically, all this fundraising is to put in a loo and a little kitchen area, so that, you know, if we've been to a service, or just not to use the church just for, you know, 1 hour on a Sunday, that if we had a little area that we could make tea and coffee and serve a few cakes, it would make the church a much more user-friendly place for we who live there.
And I think that's key, isn't it, nowadays? Churches have got to be flexible. Yes,
they have. They have. You know, congregations, let's be honest, in most places are not quite as big as they used to be. So it is hard to maintain your village church. But, you know, for me, it's quite an important part of village life. So now that's cooking really well. So now I'm going to add some garlic, not too much, because lamb's quite a gentle meat, and you can overface it by putting too much garlic in. So I'm going to add the garlic now. That's plenty. I've even got sheep on my chopping boards. Sheep and pigs. So that's that going in. And now I'm going to add 2 carrots, the 2 carrots that I've chopped up, and also 1 stick of celery. That's all you need, just the 1 stick. You don't need to make notes, anybody, because the recipe will be there on the YouTube site. So there we go, that all goes in. I'm just going to let that cook for a minute or 2 now.
Tell us a little bit more about Osmington.
Well, it's a very small village. It's probably got a population of not much more than 700. And basically not many streets. The original streets were Church Lane with the church, Chapel Lane, which had the chapel, and Village Street that had the shop. You know, really, really simple. And then as farming has become more mechanised and farming houses and other things weren't needed, some of the buildings that were part of the farms have been converted into housing. So we've got West Farm and East Farm, and a couple of other roads. And then the road that leads down to Weymouth, that used to have the village school, and a pub. We used to have 2 pubs in the village, which is really quite amazing, really. But it's interesting. And some quite famous people have been to Osmington. John Constable, when he got married, his best friend was the Reverend Fisher, who was the vicar of Osmington. So John Constable and his wife, they came to Osmington for their honeymoon. So in fact he painted the church, and then he also painted Weymouth along the beach and things. So there's him. And then the other guy was Talbot Hughes, yes. He wasn't born in Osmington, but he was also a very well-known artist, much more well-known in America than in England. But he came to live in Osmington eventually. And sadly, I mean, he's buried in our churchyard. And he painted, and he also designed dresses for the theatre. And they are actually all in the V&A museum. Sadly, they're not all on show, but they are just quite beautiful. So we've done quite well for famous people one way and another. We've had some infamous ones as well.
It was interesting to note the year that Constable was staying in Osmington was the year there was a huge explosion of a volcano, which sent tons of clouds of dust into the atmosphere and turned night into day.
Wow.
And the whole village was blanked off for days, and the sun never rose. And it was like living in darkness for many days.
So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of plain flour, which is going in here now.
I have to say the smell is making my mouth water.
Oh, good. We're having this for lunch. So there we are. So I'm going to now, when I've just mixed this in a little bit, I'm going to add a spoon of tomato puree and put that in as well.
Amazing how you can get all of these things like garlic and ginger ready chopped
Yes.
in these lazy things, and I must confess, I take full advantage of that.
So I'm going to just add this now and let it get a bit stodgy. And at this point I'm going to add a bit of salt and pepper as well. I don't oversalt things, but keep telling us that we shouldn't be eating too much salt. And as the cheese mixture that's going on the top, you know, the salt and cheese, I won't overdo it on the salt, but a little bit of salt and pepper is probably going to do well in this.
Is this a seasonal dish? Would you serve this at any
Well, I mean, obviously it's probably, from the point of view of being hale and hearty, it's probably a better one to eat in the winter. But as I say, I cook it at any time. And certainly when my family descend on me, I cook it quite often because it's easy peasy and everybody seems to like it. And as I keep saying, I then don't have to do potatoes. So that's good. So now that's got a bit stodgy, I'm now going to put in a glass of red wine, and you'll notice that it's the whole glass. I'm not drinking any. And 350 mils of stock. And I just buy the lamb stock stock pot things. That's a very easy way of doing it. So I'm putting that in. And I'm going to add 2 stalks of of rosemary that I've cut from the garden and just chopped it up, and I'm going to add the rosemary now as well. And basically that's all it is. And I'm going to just cook this only for 5 minutes, because it obviously then is going in the oven, and the main cooking part all happens in the oven. But I say this part you can do well in advance, and put it in the freezer, or make it in the morning if you've got people coming for lunch or what have you, and then just build it before you're going to actually put it in the oven. I like dishes that do that. So there we are. Just let that come to the boil. So now I think that's pretty well cooked, as much as I need it to. I might just leave it a minute or two just to take off a little bit of the fluid. So I'm going to leave that now to cool down, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to make the crumble. I say it's so easy, it's really a few minutes. So now we're up to making the crumble, and that's really, really simple. So in the bowl I've got 150 grams of plain flour, and I'm going to add to this 100 grams, 75 grams of unsalted butter. So I'll put that in, and I'm going to put my hands in now. I've washed them since I did the meat, and I'm just going to mix it all up. Lift it high, because if you put a bit of air in, it's better for anything that you're making using flour. So lift it up a bit to do. And all you're going to do is rub it between your finger and your thumb, so that you end up with something that vaguely resembles breadcrumbs. So there we are, I've done that. That's a couple of minutes of just doing that. And now I'm going to add 100 grams of cheese that has been grated.
Any particular type of cheese?
Well, you could use what you like, but actually probably cheddar works best. And of course these days cheddar isn't only made in Cheddar. Most counties that have got dairy farms, they're all trying to diversify. And so every county in the country's cheddar cheese just tastes a little bit different.
And what's Dorset's main cheese?
Dorset's main cheese is called Blue Vinny. And we're going to use that on some of the other recipes. I've got some nice recipes that use Blue Vinny cheese. And there you are, that's just done. Okay, so now I'll just put that to one side for a minute. So I'm going to put this into a dish. So here is the mixture that we made earlier, and you can see it's cooled off nicely. No problem. You can smell the lamb, and of course it's only partly cooked at the minute, but you can got a distinctive smell, lamb, which is very nice. But anyway, so here we are, the lamb's here in the dish. As you've seen, all we've had is one pan, one dish to make the thing in, and the dish we're going to cook it in. You didn't need to have everything pre-chopped as I've done, so you're not going to have loads of washing up. And all I'm going to do now is sprinkle this on the top, and then it goes in the oven at 160, I think, and it's in there for 30-40 minutes till it's all nice and brown on the top. So there we are, it just makes the right amount. Here's one I made earlier, and this one is in fact the vegetarian version. This one's been made with brown lentils. You can use brown lentils or green lentils, either one, whichever you've got in the cupboard. Don't go out and buy something special. But that's the vegetarian version, and here ready to go in the oven is the meat version. So I hope you've enjoyed watching today, and I hope you'll come back again next time for the next dish, and we're going to make the very famous Dorset apple cake. And in fact, if somebody could just pass me one, cameraman. This is another one I've made earlier, and here is a Dorset apple cake, and this is what we're going to make next time. It's lovely served warm. In our house it's always served with ice cream, because my mum doesn't like cream, but you can do cream or ice cream and it is absolutely yummy, either as a dessert or for afternoon tea, being terribly British. Okay, thank you very much.